When someone dared me to spend an hour inside Riverside General Hospital, I didn't think twice. The place had been closed for years, ever since the fire gutted half the building. Local stories said the fire alarms never worked. Patients burned alive in their beds. Doctors trapped behind locked emergency doors. "Don't trespass there," my best friend warned. They say the patients never left. Exactly the kind of line that makes you want to go even more. I slipped in through a broken side door just after midnight. The smell hit me first. Mold, ash, rust. The kind of smell that clings to your throat and makes you want to cough. My flashlight cut through the darkness, bouncing off peeling paint and broken tiles. At first it was exciting. Graffiti on the walls. A half-burned wheelchair. Empty 4 bags hanging like shriveled fruit. I kept filming, whispering to the camera. "This is it, guys. Riverside, the haunted hospital." But then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Not echoes. Slow, deliberate steps behind me in the corridor. I spun around, light beam shaking. Nothing. Just a hallway stretching into black. I laughed nervously, told the camera it was probably rats, and kept going. But from that moment, the energy changed. The air felt heavier, like the building itself was pressing down on me. I turned a corner and found myself in what used to be the surgical wing. Rusted operating lamps dangled from the ceiling. Metal trays were overturned, scalpels scattered across the floor, like someone dropped them mid-surgery. And then my flashlight flickered out. I smacked it. The beam came back for a second, long enough for me to see something that froze me in place. The operating table in the middle of the room wasn't empty anymore. There was a shape on it, a human shape. The light died again, and in that suffocating dark, I heard a whisper right next to my ear. "Patient admitted." My chest tightened. I bolted out of the surgical wing, stumbling through debris. I didn't care about filming anymore. I just wanted to find the exit. But the hospital, it wasn't letting me out. Every hallway looked the same. Doors I swore I'd passed before weren't there. Instead, new ones appeared. One had a crooked sign above it, "Admissions." Against every survival instinct, I opened it. Inside was a reception desk, covered in dust. A clipboard lay on top. I shouldn't have looked, but my shaking hands lifted it anyway. It was a patient list. Page after page of names, scribbled in fading ink. Some were crossed out, others circled. But what made my stomach drop was the last entry. Name, Elon Musk. Status, pending. I dropped the clipboard. My mouth went dry. How could my name be there? I hadn't told anyone I was coming. And then, down the hall, I heard the creak of wheels, like a gurney being rolled. I ran. Every door slammed shut behind me as I passed, like the building was sealing me inside. The footsteps came back, louder, more numerous. Not just one person following me now. Dozens. Shuffling feet. Labored breathing. Moans. I crashed into a stairwell, bolting upward 2 steps at a time. At the top, I shoved open a door and found myself in the pediatric ward. Children's drawings still clung to the walls. Smiling suns. Crayon stick figures. Except the smiles had been smeared into wide, jagged lines. Something moved at the end of the hall. Tiny shadows darting between the rooms. Laughter, high-pitched and broken. I backed away, whispering to myself, "This isn't real. This isn't real." But when I turned, the hallway behind me was filled. Patients, burned, bandaged, faceless. They stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking my path, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. And in unison, they whispered the same words. Patient admitted. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe the hospital let me go. Maybe it wanted me to tell this story. But when I woke up, I was lying outside on the pavement. My phone shattered beside me. I tried to laugh it off. Tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, hallucinations, my brain playing tricks. Until yesterday. Yesterday, I found an envelope shoved under my door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, aged yellow, like it had been pulled straight from that hospital clipboard. It was a patient list. And next to my name, the word pending had been crossed out, replaced with one word, written in fresh black ink. Admitted. So, if you're listening to this, if you're watching my footage, remember what I said at the start. Don't trespass where you don't belong, because some places don't forget your face, and some places never let their patients leave. Have you ever walked through a cemetery at night? I don't mean on Halloween with a group of friends, daring each other to act tough. I mean alone, past midnight, when the air is so still that every sound, the crunch of gravel, the rustle of leaves, feels like it doesn't belong to you. I thought it would be just another adrenaline rush, another dumb story for my friends. But the thing about cemeteries is they're not empty. They're patient. And if you trespass long enough, eventually one of those graves will stop waiting. It started as a dare like always. Bet you won't stay in the old cemetery past midnight, my friend said, grinning to the globe of his phone screen. And me, being the idiot who never backs down, just shrugged. Watch me. The cemetery sat on the edge of town, surrounded by crooked iron gates and oak trees older than anything else around. They said it closed decades ago, after vandals destroyed part of it. But people whispered other reasons. Names carved into headstones that weren't dead yet, coffins that were empty when opened, shadows that moved even when the moon was still. Exactly the kind of place I wanted to show off. I slipped through a gap in the gate at 12:15 a.m., flashlight in hand. The air was cold, sharper than it should have been for the season. The rows of gravestones stretched into the darkness, leaning and cracked, as if they were trying to crawl out of the dirt. At first, I kept narrating to my camera. Here we are, Riverside Cemetery. Totally alone, middle of the night. My voice sounded fake, shaky, but then something strange caught my eye. The names. The names on the stones weren't random. I walked past one, Daniel Carter. 1999, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Another, Sarah Lynn. 2003, asterisk, 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 asterisk. The birth years were recent. Too recent. And the death years? Blank. It didn't make sense. These weren't graves of people who had died. These were graves of people who were still alive. The deeper I went, the more familiar the names became. Classmates, neighbors, people I saw every day. Until I froze. One headstone had my best friend's name. Same birthday, same last name. The inscription below read, "He will enter soon." My stomach dropped. I told myself it was some sick prank, that vandals carved these names to freak people out. But when I leaned closer, I saw the stone wasn't new. The lettering was weathered, the moss clinging to it decades old. And then I saw it. At the very end of the row, separated from the rest, was a grave with a fresh mound of dirt. The stone was clean, untouched by time, and carved into it was my name. Not just my name, my exact birthday. And beneath it, died tomorrow. I staggered back, flashlight trembling in my hand. My chest tightened like a fist was squeezing my lungs. That's when I heard the first sound. Scratching. From beneath the dirt. Slow at first, like fingernails dragging across wood. Then faster, harder. Something was trying to claw its way out. I turned to run, but the cemetery had changed. The rows of stones twisted in different directions. Paths splitting where none had been before. Every route I took led me back to the same grave. My grave. The scratching grew louder. I dropped the flashlight and fell to my knees. My hands touched the dirt. It was warm. And then a whisper rose from beneath the soil. "You shouldn't have come early." I screamed and tore myself away, sprinting blindly through the dark. Branches whipped across my face. The sound of footsteps. No, not footsteps. Something dragging, following behind me. I didn't care which direction I ran. I just needed out. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw the iron gates again. I didn't stop to breathe, didn't dare look back. I threw myself through the gap, collapsing onto the empty road. When I looked behind me, the cemetery was silent. No movement, no sound, just rows of crooked stones in the moonlight, like nothing had happened. I tried to laugh it off later. Told myself I was tired. My brain was playing tricks, that I'd hallucinated everything. But when I checked my phone, the video I recorded was gone. The files were there, but they were blank, just black screens with static. And then this morning, I got a text message from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was a picture of my grave. Fresh dirt, stone shining. And the date of death wasn't tomorrow anymore. It was today. So if you're listening to this, if you think it's just some spooky story, then do yourself one favor. Never trespass in a cemetery. Because some graves aren't waiting for you to die. They're waiting for you to arrive.
Do you remember your old school? Not the classrooms or the lessons. I mean the building itself. The school had been shut down for years after funding cuts, left to rot on the edge of town. Windows boarded up, paint peeling, fences rusting. But everyone in the neighborhood knew the real reason it closed. Rumors spread about children hearing voices in the halls, about a teacher who vanished without explanation, about names called during roll call that no one had ever heard before. Exactly the kind of story I wanted to debunk. I slipped through a broken door at 1 a.m., flashlight in hand. The air was thick, like dust and mildew had been stewing for years. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, bouncing down the corridor as if someone else was walking in sync with me. The classrooms were frozen in time. Desks overturned, chalk still faintly smeared on the boards. In one room, textbooks lay open to math problems, as if the students had vanished mid-lesson. I tried to make it funny for the camera. Check it out. Creepy school, empty desks. Real scary, huh? But then, in the middle of filming, I heard it. A squeak, like chalk dragging across a board. My flashlight jerked toward the sound. The nearest classroom door stood slightly open. Heart hammering, I pushed inside. On the chalkboard, words appeared, fresh, white against the green surface. Attendance. And below it, one by one, names began to appear. At first, I thought it was some leftover prank. But then I saw the names weren't random. They were my old classmates, people who had gone to this school years ago. Some names I hadn't thought about in forever. And then my own name appeared at the bottom. I laughed nervously, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the chalk kept moving, scribbling faster, harder, until it carved a crooked cross next to my name. I backed out of the room, pulse racing. The hallways suddenly felt longer, darker, as if the building was stretching. Every door I passed seemed to creak open, revealing empty classrooms filled with whispers. I reached the gymnasium. Bleachers collapsed, basketball hoop broken, floorboards warped. For a second, I felt relief. It was big, open, less suffocating. Until I realized the bleachers weren't empty. Rows of students sat there, motionless. But they weren't real. Not anymore. Their skin was pale, gray, eyes hollow. They stared straight ahead, their mouths twisted into wide, unnatural smiles. And then, all at once, they turned their heads toward me. The sound of a bell rang, loud, sharp, echoing through the entire building. The students rose from their seats. I ran. The corridors blurred together, lockers slamming open and shut as I passed. Whispered laughter followed me, bouncing off the walls. Doors slammed behind me, hurting me deeper inside. Finally, I burst into the principal's office. Papers scattered across the desk, filing cabinets rusted. On the wall, a huge chalkboard covered in names, hundreds of them. Every name had a cross beside it, except one, mine. And even as I stood there, gasping for breath, the chalk began to scrape again, writing across the board. Absent, present. I spun around, desperate to leave. But the office door was gone, just a blank wall. The only sound was the chalk, scratching faster, harder, until it broke in half. Then came the voices, children chanting, over and over, present, present, present. The room darkened, the floorboards creaked, and cold hands, small, too many hands, reached out from beneath the desk, clawing at my legs, dragging me down. I screamed, kicking, tearing free, slamming against the wall until suddenly, the door was there again. I stumbled through it, racing blindly until I found the exit. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping in the cold night air. I thought it was over. I told myself it was stress, hallucination, my brain messing with me in the dark. But yesterday morning, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no message body, just an attachment. It was a scanned document, a page from a school register. It listed names, dates, and check marks. And at the very bottom, in neat handwriting, was my name. Next to it, present. So if you're hearing this, if you ever think about sneaking into your old school for fun, don't. Because once that final roll call begins, there's no graduation. Only attendance. Forever.